really good.
I was surprised.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Frank. Oh, you put another chair in the way? Yeah, we haven't been great with our aim on these chairs. We had to move like 2 whole rows here. Yeah, we've got this chair ended up being right in the way. I think that probably gets us now, maybe. I'm expecting there's probably a few more people that are still stuck in traffic or locked out, finding their way in. We do have somebody down by the front door letting people in. We also have the pizza guy who called me to say he's running just a couple minutes late. So, the beer guy is not sure this time. But we got pizza and sodas coming up. Actually, there's a pizza guy now. So he's all the way upstairs.
He's gonna get in.
Yeah, we got somebody watching the door.
Everybody's so right.
Make sure that guy can get in. Anybody? Yeah, right along there. We should go buffet style. We have a few chairs over here that are open, and we have most of this area that's full. So if anybody's willing to switch, that would really help me because the people that show up late would have to cut in front of the projector and everything to get over here. So if anybody over here would be willing to move over there now, that would be amazing. We got 1 volunteer, 2 volunteers, 3 volunteers. All right, come on down. All right, so pizza and drinks are provided by our sponsors. And you might be asking, well, who are our sponsors? Yeah, that's definitely the first question you want to know. This little company, small startup, Bing. Anybody ever heard of them? It's owned by a little garage company, Microsoft. Bing Ads is one of our sponsors. We've also got A2 Hosting, Deep Crawl, Look to the Right, TheeDesign, Reunion Marketing, and Opsis WordPress Management. All of these sponsors are helping to make these events happen at no cost to anybody that's in attendance, unless the sponsors are here. Okay. So we'll have a whole selection of pizzas and sodas to be able to partake of. Usually we kick off with that, but we're going to change this up because the delivery guy's just getting here. And we're going to have Rob speak first, and then we're going to have a little intermission where everybody gets pizza and drinks. It'll also give me a chance to swap out some tech because we have somebody joining us via remote. Another URL that you guys are going to want to jot down real quick is RaleighSEOconference.com. See, we have a conference that we do in May, and it's in Raleigh, and the topic is Internet Marketing and SEO. So I'm incredibly creative. So it's RaleighSEOconference.com. Yeah.
Is there a date for that?
It's the 3rd Tuesday in May. I'm glad you asked. So one of the things that we do is with the Raleigh SEO meetup, you may have noticed that we have a theme that our events are free and open. We want a lot of people to be able to come out and learn how to do internet marketing. The conference is similar, but slightly different. The after party is free and open for everybody. So even if you don't get a ticket, come and join us for the after party. It's on the 3rd Tuesday. It lines up when we normally would have our meetup event. If you have a ticket, come out to the conference, partake of all of that, and then join us at the after party as well. Does that make sense? So, upcoming events. We have a practical series that we've been doing for the last couple of months. The next installment in that series is on-site SEO. That's coming up on April 5th. Then we have all things technical SEO. That's going to be an advanced discussion. We're going to have that on April 17th. Patrick Stocks of IBM is going to be one of the speakers there, as well as, I'm going to butcher his last name. I know the man. I've spoken with him several times, but I'm terrible with names. Dan Hinckley. Did I get it right? Those that know him. Hey. From Go Fish Digital. And Paul Shapiro of Catalyst, who is going to be brought in via video. So we're testing that out. Hopefully it'll work. And next month, I have secured the classroom, which is downstairs. If you guys have never been to the Frontier, basically the set of windows on the ground floor you can see from here is right in front of the classroom. So you'll just navigate your way to that area. It's a cool little room. I think you guys will like it. That conference is May 15th, the Raleigh SEO conference. And keynote speakers that we have signed up, Jenny, butcher her last name too, Hallis? Hallis. Hey, I got that one right. Jenny Hallis of JLH Marketing, as well as, and this is a really cool one, who here knows when the Raleigh SEO meetup was started without looking at meetup and cheating? Patrick? Nobody else?
What was the question?
What year was the Raleigh SEO meetup started?
I think 2008.
There you go. Some interesting math works out when you have that year. This is the 10-year anniversary. So we have the original founder of the Raleigh SEO meetup that's coming out. She's going to be one of the keynote speakers, Ashley Berman-Hale. She's pretty well known in the SEO community. So we're going to geek out with Jenny and Ashley. Speaker applications and more details are on the URL that I've given you guys for that conference. So up first, we have, I'm going to butcher your last name also. Delory?
Delory? Yes. Yeah,
Delory? Okay. See, I'm so great with names. No, the Rob part's just starting to stick. That's yeah. Patrick can vouch for me. I knew him for 3 years.
3 years. 3 years.
He runs the RTP SEO meetup, and that has meetings in Durham, right?
Wherever in space, yeah.
It's where SEO meetup.
There you go.
Sometimes called beer and SEO.
Yes.
Patrick wanted to make sure that
He's trying to
know
change
about
that.
Yeah.
It's
And
okay.
also a meetup called Dogs, or
Pints and
Pups.
Pups.
Pints and Pups. And has a position at TheeDesign, one of our sponsors, as the director of strategy. And so you're going to geek out with us about local SEO.
Local SEO. There's Hannah. Hey, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? I can speak louder if I need to. Okay, fantastic. So, I'm Rob Delory, as you said, with TheeDesign. I work with companies on web development, but mostly I like to talk to them about search engine optimization because I'm just a big fan and a big geek. This is part of my team that I work with, about half the people because I couldn't get them all together for one picture and I wanted a recent photo, so that's how I ended up with that picture right there. Okay, so I want to talk about local SEO, and a lot of people say, well, what's the difference between local SEO and SEO? Really, there isn't a big difference. The same rules pretty much apply, but the few differentiators is what I'm going to focus on. So I'm not going to get into details about URL structure and things like that today. Basically, we're just going to talk about what you have to keep in mind if you're trying to rank in an area locally. So basically what I like to start out with is talking about the actual landing page, the search engine results page. So first of all, when we're looking, we always see the ads up here. I think that's going to be talked about later, isn't that right, guys? Then we have our local listings here, the map and the 3-pack. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And we have our organic search results. I always like to just go ahead and talk these three through so that as we're moving forward, sometimes it can get a little bit confusing of, well, are you referring to the organic listing or are you talking about the Google My Business listing? So on that note, a lot of people don't realize that the Google My Business listing and your organic search results for your website are two separate entities. So I always like to start out with asking, did you realize that your search results can produce something that doesn't even have a website? So as we're looking here, I did a search for bail bonds in Raleigh. I had to do that recently for Frank. That's all I'm talking about. But as I was looking through, you always get the actual results here in the Google My Business, the 3-pack right here. So, you can tell that we go ahead and we have the website here. They went ahead and added a website. Up here, this simple listing doesn't have a website attached to it. They might have a website, but that's the only result that came up for that company. So therefore, Google is not looking at it and attaching it. You can go ahead and put your Facebook page up there. You can put whatever you want in that Google My Business listing, but something that people just don't think about. I like to talk about it because it helps to go ahead and define that this doesn't have to do with your website. The rankings are not. What you got that?
So Rob, you're saying that
Yep.
That's coming just from the Google listing itself, the My Business.
That's right. I don't want to assume, but we'll get into the discussion about Google My Business listing. This is basically your online profile, kind of like when you go ahead and you set up a Facebook profile or a Facebook page for a business. This has nothing to do with your website unless you want to add your website to the profile itself. So the answer is yes. That's the only listing that showed up on that search result that, according to what I'm seeing here, they just didn't have a website. And they didn't need one because, as you can see, they showed up. Somebody can click through, get the phone number, and contact them. So again, this is the 3-pack, but this is the actual listing that shows up. And we've all seen this as we've done our searches. Sometimes you're looking for a specific business, and the actual name will show up on the right-hand side. You'll see the actual profile. That profile is what shows up in the 3-pack list. Now, the way that it works is, again, proximity. Google's trying to guess where you are when you're making a search. They're always trying to make things easier for us. They're trying to be more predictive. So when we're going ahead and doing our searches, right down the bottom of the actual search page, you'll see where Google is guessing that you are. It picks up on IP addresses, picks up on a number of different details. But what happens is it starts saying, okay, I think that you're in Raleigh, so I'm going to attempt on certain types of searches to go ahead and produce a Raleigh search result, which again is why I did my search up in North Raleigh, and as you can see, that's where my results were basically showing up. The Google My Business listing is something that people will go ahead and set up and kind of forget it. They see it as, just like I said, Facebook, your Twitter, you're supposed to set up your Google My Business. Yeah, it's great because it shows up. But a lot of people don't realize you can do work to actually optimize this listing. So when I'd say that local SEO is different than SEO in certain ways, this is probably the biggest way is this one listing. What happens is Google wants to know things about your business. Give me some photos, give me the company name. Hey, people can go ahead and leave reviews. Tell me the category of your business so that we can go ahead and place it into the search algorithm better. Address, phone number, and of course, I like to always put a website in there because I don't want to rely on what we saw with the bail bonds of somebody maybe calling because I believe more information is always. So the way that it works is that Google picks up on name, address, and phone number. It's going ahead and it's matching, and I'll show you in just a second what I mean by that. But what it's doing is it's checking the phone number here, and it's checking other citations. So when we have, say, a bail bondsman up here who's provided that name, address, phone number, it's matching it to other areas online where it's also listed the name, address, and phone number. By doing so, it starts having more confidence in the actual listing itself. It's saying, okay, you've gone ahead and provided me information here. Let me go onto the internet and start checking other places and seeing if that information is the same. Now, what happens is sometimes there's discrepancies out there. You've got multiple phone numbers. Maybe when you started your business, you had your cell phone and you registered your business and other websites started picking up on that. Then you went with maybe YP, Yellow Pages or something like that. For a while, some of the directory listings started building with 800 phone numbers out there. then you might have gotten away from them and said, okay, I've got an actual physical office, I have my phone number, here we go, I've got my actual phone number for my business. Well, sometimes they're just sitting out there from 5, 8 years ago of name, address, phone number, and they're all mismatching up. And Google's trying to go ahead and match it up with what it's seeing here and here, because you got to remember, nobody's sitting there and checking things out and saying, oh yeah, I know that guy. He's got a bail bonds, he's good. It's an algorithm. It's just going ahead and it's counting things and it's matching up. And if there isn't enough information out there that's consistent, Google's going to have less confidence in your listing. And therefore, in that 3-pack, somebody else might have a higher likelihood if they just have more consistency out there. So what happens here is you can either have some listings that are out there, those directory, those citation listings that are out there, some of them mismatching. Which do you think Google's going to prefer and have more confidence in? So as we're doing local SEO, we want to make sure that our citations and our directory listings are all in unison. There's tools that you can use to check things like that out. There's tools that will go ahead and do this for you online. But I didn't want to get into that because we could go into a whole evening of just talking about all of the tools that are on. Basically, what you want to do is check on these things as you're moving forward, making sure that you're keeping things consistent. Your address, make sure that you have that consistent. If you have more than one address, start making sure that the addresses that you're using for your multiple locations or your Google Plus, that you have directory listings set up for each one of them. And you will go ahead and show up higher in the search rankings because, again, Google's going to have more confidence in it. Everybody still hearing me? Okay, good. Okay. Now, the nice thing is as Google evolves, it starts giving us a few extra tools. So, for example, sometimes people want to go ahead and put into this Google listing not just one phone number. They say, hey, I want to go ahead and use a tracking number because I'm performing certain marketing efforts and I want to be able to use a tracking number. So Google said, okay, let's go ahead and give you a couple of extra fields here. Now, I haven't tried this yet, and this is where I turn to Patrick. Yes, Patrick, putting you on the spot. The extra phone numbers here, so if you have, say, listings with 3 different phone numbers out there, instead of trying to go fix those phone numbers, could you use this just to go ahead and put all 3 phone numbers in and kind of resolve that issue?
Yeah, it will associate them with your profile. So I think you can do up to 5 additional.
That's why we test things. That's why I ask other people right while we're live. So thank you for. So you can go back and fix citations, and you should go back and fix citations. But know that Google is constantly trying to adjust for this to help us out. The next thing you really should start paying attention to in this Google listing is your actual categories. I can't tell you how many times a company will come along and they say, well, I really want to rank for being a painter, even though I offer remodeling as well, and hey, we do power washing too. A lot of times people will go ahead and put that in because they say, hey, I'm a painter, and then they'll go ahead and add something else. Google prioritizes this. You're allowed to put in 10 different categories under your Google My Business listing of what it is that you offer for services. And I keep focusing on services. A lot of businesses that want to be found locally, unless you're a retail store, usually offer services. So that's why I'm focusing so heavily upon this. But in this case, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and say, I'm a painter, I do power washing, I do home remodeling, and whatever other 7 things that you do. Know that Google is going to look at this right here, the first one that's in the list, and say, okay, that's really what you are, and you do these other things. If you're trying to compete competitively in a certain area for a certain service, you would do well by deciding what it is that you want to rank most for, and everything else is second. Because of this, just by changing this as maybe that was second or third in line and making sure that it was the primary, you have a far better chance of showing up when somebody does a search for painter in Raleigh or painter on certain street or certain area. It's it's funny because, you learn this through trial and error, that something that small can make a big difference. You were going to say something, sir?
Oh, I thought you raised your hand.
Sorry. One of the other things that we focus on and I know I'm focusing on this Google My Business listing, but it is important. What do you get?
So before the subcategory thing,
Yeah.
I try to add all the 9 subcategories, and I try to just trick Google and add just totally.
Don't try and trick Google.
Just totally a different category than my business, and
Okay.
Next thing you know, after 3 days, my listing didn't show up.
Okay.
Just completely didn't show up.
Sometimes they verify
Yeah,
these.
so-
I actually have to backtrack a bit. Again, it is an algorithm, but in certain cases like that, where you're making a change to your profile, somebody may have looked at that. And what were you trying to do? Like, I'm a painter and a CPA?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, things like that, they will pick up on. So that's why sometimes you submit it and it says, we'll put this change up once we've reviewed it. Sometimes they just go ahead and just press the button. But in that case, don't do that. Because somebody else, okay.
I have a question. Going back to the phone numbers,
Yeah.
if you list additional phone numbers, they still only show the primary phone number, though, right?
That's right. They're going to show the primary phone number because, again, they don't want to confuse you, the person who's doing the search, in being able to say, okay, well, which phone number am I supposed to call? So they're showing that, but they're just adding those other ones for the sake of what we described there. Sometimes people use tracking numbers. Sometimes people have used multiple phone numbers for their businesses. So.
A question.
You did have a question, see?
No. It wasn't. I don't think it was anyway. Could you set up different profiles for one company, or would you have to create different companies if you want to target different services? Or, like, let's say you're a painter and you do power washing in this scenario.
Okay.
Could you create 2 different profiles, one for painting, like in this case, CLH painting, and then CLH power washing?
What you're not supposed to do is create 2 of the same profiles for the exact same address. So my answer to you is, if you had multiple offices in Raleigh, you could do one as painter and one as power washer. But me personally, I would go ahead and make sure that I had those categories in there and choose which one was most important. Because really, you're going to have to double up the efforts now of being able to go ahead and create citation listings for 2 different, and that is always a lot more time, expense, effort, headache. So that would be the recommendation. Please.
So with your address, like this one has Suite 102. If you were like 102B, is that a differentiator? No?
You could easily get caught by that, but because, again, it all depends. Sometimes people do that and it works fine. Sometimes people do that and it works fine for a while, and then Google catches that. Post office is a really good example, because the post office, I'm told, I haven't seen this particular issue, but they will go ahead and check against post office records, and if that actual suite number doesn't exist, I've heard things like that can go away. I haven't seen that particular. I'm just telling you what I would or wouldn't do. That you could try that. Some people have done that and gotten away with it for years. Somehow Google always catches up. Uh-oh, here it comes.
I would clarify on the
Please.
multiple addresses that if you're a large business and you have multiple departments, you can claim that. I think Google uses a Walmart versus Walmart Vision Center, where you can still be with the same physical address and you can have 2 listings if it's a department. Now, if you're a hardware store and also you have a mowing center in the back,
Right.
I think that gets into what Rob is saying with, if you're looking like you're spamming there, but if you have a legitimate business with 2 distinct, legitimate, separate categories within it, with different customer service, with different entrances, everything, then you can have it at the same location, but it is more of a department type thing for larger businesses.
Exactly. So again, it's a matter of scale. A company that size would have a reason to go ahead and have different in there. So yeah, absolutely.
Where were we?
Google reviews. So again, Google wants to have confidence that they're making the best recommendation, because that's what they're doing. They're putting up here in this 3-pack, if I can ever get back to this thing here. In the 3-pack here, they're saying this is the most relevant search result. Even though, again, it's the business listing, they're working that the same way that they would the organic results. So they're factoring in, yes, we have confidence that this place is not closed, that it is what it says that it is. And then reviews start factoring into that because, hey, all of these other people really like this place. So somewhere in that algorithm again, that starts to factor in. And so that's why I've always talked to people about encouraging them to go ahead and get reviews. Now, you can't ask for positive reviews. That's against Google's policies, but you can encourage people to leave reviews. Doing good business, then hopefully they're going to leave positive reviews. But this isn't, I always get asked this question, that's why I want to get out in front of this. Yes, I have seen companies that have 2 reviews that outrank somebody who has 54 reviews. I don't know the algorithm perfectly well enough. Maybe proximity was taken into account, maybe the NAP listings were taken into account, but what it really comes down to is that we just try and do all of these best practices to try and rank as high as possible. I don't talk about Bing much, and I'm not talking about just because their sponsors here either. It's just people do ask about it, and you should definitely pay attention to it. They're practicing the same way that Google is in a lot of ways. That the name, address, phone numbers, those are still important. What I always like to point out, though, is that unlike Google, Google has its own reviews, its own star review system. I don't know why Bing just completely abandoned that, but they decided to go ahead. You'll see that they use Yelp as their rating system. So that's one last thing that you should really pay attention to. If Bing traffic is important to you, then you want to make sure you go ahead and pay attention to your Yelp reviews as well. But let's move off of the My Business listing and start talking about. Does anybody know who he is, by the way? I showed this to a couple of people today. They had no idea.
John C. Riley?
It's Johnny Carson. Sorry. Okay, I won't mention that again. So when we're talking about your organic search results, again, this is solely focused on just your website ranking. And I know it's far down there, but people who are wanting to do their research for local will go ahead and seek out the actual website to find out more about the services and such. So what I always try to tell people is don't make them guess. If you say to yourself, oh, well, Google will figure that out when I go ahead and create a page, then you're missing the whole point here because Google doesn't like to have to make inferences. So for example, for location modifiers, the modifiers themselves, when somebody types in power washing in Raleigh, that now becomes a keyword. And because of that, we have to treat it that way. We have to make sure that it becomes part of the content. Otherwise, we're guessing. We're waiting for Google to try and figure out that we're in Raleigh. Well, I went ahead and put my website into the Google My Business listing, so of course Google knows that I'm in Raleigh. That chance. Go ahead and make sure that it goes through the content. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a second. When we're talking about the location modifier as well, run into this. People say, oh, well, I say that I'm in the triangle, so the search engines must know that the triangle means Raleigh and Durham and all of these other cities. No, that's not the case. You have to get very specific because, again, it's a computer. So people often try to say, well, I'm part of the Piedmont. Nobody's doing searches for tow trucks in the Piedmont area. I mean, it's just not natural. So we have to start realizing that people will usually put in the city. Some of them will put in the zip code. This happens quite a bit. And some people will even get down to the point of doing neighborhoods. It doesn't happen as often, but Google's picking up on this. Again, as another example, for a realtor, if somebody is out driving around and they're in a really nice neighborhood, one of the things that they might type in is homes for sale in Windsor Estates. That's now become a location but it's also a keyword. And so many people miss this opportunity where if they're creating content, you can go ahead and create content for the actual neighborhoods. And Google will figure it out and know that that's, you know, your location when they're looking at the bottom and they're saying, okay, you're in Raleigh, you've asked for Windsor Estates. I've seen this a few times before. There's a Windsor Estates neighborhood. Then they can go ahead and make the connection. But you have to help Google halfway by putting it on your website. How am I doing on time, by the way? 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Question on that. Google's pretty smart when it comes to maps. Can it figure out neighborhood once you give it an address?
Yes.
Yeah, it can. If you look at the maps closely enough, you'll see that they'll actually designate certain areas a neighborhood to go ahead and make the assumption that they'll figure things out. Again, I don't like to leave things like that to chance. So
basically you're saying that you use Google to advertise for your business, correct? And anyone can do it.
But what do you mean by that? Because the answer is yes.
Okay, so I've heard that some businesses actually pay Google to have their, you know, when you type in like plumber or something to come up first.
Absolutely.
Do you think that would be more effective than just creating your own Google account?
You know, the second half today, somebody's going to talk about pay-per-click and things of that sort, so I don't want to step on her.
We lost that person.
What's that?
We lost that person.
Do I get to talk about paid advertising for local as well? What do you mean you lost that person?
That was Mike. He did.
Oh, okay. But the answer is yes. I'd love to have a conversation someday, or maybe a debate, talking about search engine optimization as opposed to paid advertising. So the answer is yes, you can go ahead and do that, and it is very effective.
Very effective.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about that, but I'm not done. So again, going back to, sorry, got a little bit lost there. Optimizing your actual pages. I always start with the title tags. And with the title tags, again, I said I wasn't going to go down the track of getting detailed about SEO, but I'm doing it right now. So title tags, usually you'll see that when you see it at the top tab of the page itself. And Google is seeing it. It's going to, if people can see it, Google puts a lot of authority behind that. So what I'm trying to say here is the title tags actually usually get transferred straight into the search results. This isn't always 100% the case. Google reserves the right to go ahead and rewrite their own title tags, but more often than not, you'll find that Google will go ahead and pick up on whatever title tag it is that you put in there and go ahead and put it up as the search result. Yeah, they reserve the right to change that. And you'll find in WordPress, because that's what I work in the most, you know, with a Yoast plugin, I'm able to go in and write that title tag so that it's different than other content like the H1 tag on the website. But I always make sure that for the important pages, the ones that I want to rank locally, I go ahead and I put in that modifier right there. Reason being is, if you look at the top search results, whenever somebody does a search for, say, a service and Raleigh, especially as it gets more competitive, and I can tell you that HVAC is very competitive, the top search results are always going to include your actual city right in that title tag. So I'm showing you this to reinforce that this isn't just me saying that, this is what we find when we go ahead and do search results. Also, oh, what have we got back there?
There's probably also a correlation between the fact that closely matches the search phrase, right? So they're doing that on purpose because the keyword that's being searched for includes the city name, so therefore the title will include it. So it most closely matches, giving them a higher chance of matching.
Exactly, because we're looking at it from the standpoint of Google figuring out that we're looking for Raleigh, but the weight of what happens here is because now the Raleigh actually became a keyword, and that just strengthened the reason for the result.
Is there a way that you can change these meta tags to match a specific keyword? Like for the same page, for the same landing page, you can have different meta tags. Is that possible?
Which meta tag?
So this
You mean this right here?
Yeah.
This title tag? Okay, I want to make sure I understand the question though. Go ahead again.
So if, let's say if I go in there and I type HVAC problem, right?
Yeah.
I'll get this specific ad. But if I type something like HVAC repair, Raleigh,
Yes.
can I change that same landing page to say something different, like that specific keyword?
Well, you can't change it on the fly. What you might be referring to is creating separate types of pages. You do want to start practicing that for different services that you have. What you can run the risk of, though, is your page is starting to compete against each other. So get really focused on what it is that you want that page to rank for. Write the content to reinforce the title tag, and you'll go ahead and rank for that. Sometimes you'll even rank for something. So if you're typing in HVAC Raleigh, your HVAC repair Raleigh page might rank on this page for that. That gets into a little bit more technical SEO, but I'm just showing best practices. And I know this sounds simple, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but I can't tell you how many businesses won't put Raleigh on their page, and it just makes me crazy. So here I am begging everybody, please put the cities on there if you want to rank for a certain city. Where's it at?
This might be more of an on-page SEO question,
Yeah.
and maybe a little bit in the weeds. But Google Maps API embed on a website, so where you can actually embed a Google map on your website to show visitors your location.
Right.
Do you know if that has any effect on local search?
I'm gonna put that out there because I've never actually explored that. If anybody wants to jump, now they're all on there.
There's something called microdata that you can put in the site, like a geolocation tag where your latitude and longitude. That'll actually, it does. I've tested a lot with it. It doesn't really have a huge impact, but it does impact it slightly. It can also help with your location-based search.
So microdata rather than doing a whole Google Map API embed.
Schema.org or JSON LD.
Right. Yeah,
It's not gonna actually affect your ranking, but it helps people understand like where you are, you're an entity, you're a business, the name of your business, all that stuff.
Okay. All right. What I haven't tested with that is, jumping forward here, sorry guys, I apologize for that. But I've been wanting to test this because sometimes without the modifier, with something like schema, the actual location where Google believes that you are, that's at the bottom of the search results, without putting the modifier in, is that where Google's getting a better understanding that you're in Raleigh and your website is in schema is optimized for Raleigh?
Location based.
Okay. Well, anyways, one of these days I'm going to run a test. I don't know. The other thing that I wanted to touch upon, you said that pay-per-click person isn't speaking now, is that right? At all?
So let's go.
We have Joy.
Other questions at the end.
Okay, that sounds good. I wanted to touch on something somebody just asked a second ago because different types of pages for different types of services that you offer. You'll also see here that when I did this search, even these top 4 searches, these weren't the home page that was showing up. These were the interior pages. So what I mean by that is don't rely upon that home page. Yeah, I've optimized that for Raleigh. Google's figured out because my home page tells them everything that they need to know. Now I went ahead and created a repair page. Go ahead and optimize that page because that's the page you want to rank as well. Now, you don't have to go through every blog post that you have and make sure you're adding Raleigh in there. Again, I don't want to oversimplify the idea, but being able to go ahead and get your interior pages to rank on page 1 for something that I think would be a pretty valuable service for a company. It's just a good idea to make sure that you're paying attention to all those things.
Hey, Rob, are those actually the top results for that search?
Yeah, that was. Yep.
It looks like they're almost all national companies that have a Raleigh page.
Yep. Well, no, that's not. The
yeah.
Hold on. Demo direct. I don't know if it's done. No, No. Thermo Direct is a Garner company.
Oh, okay.
Comfort Service One, I don't know the answer to that. To be honest, I just grabbed it because it was a good example of what I was looking for. But to your point, if you're ever looking at it saying, well, I don't know if it really makes a difference, I can tell you that Home Advisor, that's really a big part of their strategy. When you go through and you start looking at all of the actual pages on their website, huge portion of them are basically dedicated to pretty much every city across the United States and small town as well. They make sure that they go ahead and they get the actual city, they get the state, and they throw the zip code in for good measure. Washington, D.C., we've got Pasadena. Zillow, the same exact thing. FindLaw, Yelp, I could go on with the list, but it's a strategy that works. It sounds like a simplistic strategy, but it really is something that these companies have invested a lot of time and effort into, making sure that they have tens of thousands of pages that are dedicated just to them. And as I said, this being the example that Google is trying to understand the intent. So for something as a term such as simply bankruptcy, you'll see that they have the news articles because they're trying to figure out what is it that you want to know about. The national organic. Why does Wikipedia have to show up in every search result? Frank works with Wikipedia.
Because it doesn't know your intent. If the intent's unsure, it'll always show up.
Exactly. But also Google says, hey, maybe you are looking for local. As soon as we put in bankruptcy attorney, everything on the search results page turned to local. And what I'll point out here is, again, we didn't put in the Raleigh modifier, but all of these have Raleigh somewhere. So again, it's a strategy that works. Content on the pages. We talked about title tags. And again, I'm not going to talk to you about optimizing the pages. Just naturally work in the city once in a while. And it's something that I can't believe law firms, I'll sit down and talk to them, I'll do a search, it's not on there. Well, we didn't think it was necessary. Well, why not? It's search engines. Search engines read everything on your website. Now, we don't want to stuff it with every other word being Durham, but once in a while, we definitely help the search engines out to know that that's where you are, because again, Google is desperately trying to figure out what is your intent. Let's help them out. I'm already, I promise. Okay, so the last part about local SEO are the backlinks themselves. Now, backlinks are important. You want websites that have high domain authority. You want industry-related backlinks. Other websites linking to your website will help you rank better in the search engines. Hopefully they're no-follow, and I bring up no-follow because a lot of people say, oh great, I'm going to go ahead and get a whole bunch of directory listings because they're easy to get. Get a link on there and suddenly my website has 50 links overnight. If they're easy to get, they're probably not that valuable. This is not 10 years ago for search engine optimization where every link counted and Google figured it out a while ago. So they actually put into a lot of those directories, the directories themselves, put a tag in there saying no follow, so it's not really passing along a lot of backlink juice, if you will. So the best strategy on this is to get quality links nationwide. Fantastic. You know, if you can go ahead and get published in some, if you're a law firm and you can go ahead and get published in National Law Review, get a link coming from that, that's fantastic. But since we're talking about local SEO, a lot of what the search engine is looking for is the relevance. And if a lot of local websites are linking to your website, Google will start paying attention to that. Because you're not trying to rank in Pasadena, you're trying to rank in Cary, North Carolina. If you have websites that are also optimized for Durham and Chapel Hill and places like that, Google is starting to figure out a local community, and it will go ahead and weight those differently for your website for different searches. So as you're going through and you're thinking about, hey, where can I get links like that? There's all sorts of opportunities. There are some directories, not all directories are bad, especially again, if they're local or they're in your industry, they're definitely worth the time for, even if it's just to get the local citation, that name, address, and phone number. But you'll find simple ones, Chamber of Commerce. Make sure if you sign up for that you went ahead and got the link to your website. There's a whole bunch of local 411, Finder 411, all sorts of directories out there for that purpose. For community sponsorship, there's all sorts of, there isn't a weekend that goes by that there's not some sort of race or some sort of competition that's going on with the Triangle. It should be giving back to the community anyways, but it's kind of nice to be able to get a sponsorship because they put it up there and oftentimes they'll go ahead and link to your website as a thank you saying, hey, we're supporting this because they support us. There's just an amazing number of places to be able to get. Everybody who has a website out there has the ability to create their own miniature directory listing. I found the Jewish Federation of Raleigh Cary, they actually have a directory listing for businesses. I don't know, I hadn't seen it before today. I was kind of amused by that. But when you start doing searches for places that will have local directories, you'll be amazed at opportunities. Realtors are a perfect example. They're starting to list out all of the companies that they're doing business with. It's a backlink, but it starts to become a directory once it's bigger. Put it again.
Actually, I'll just mention it. Anyone who sponsors any of our events, there's around 45,000 Jewish families in the Triangle, on the eastern side of the Triangle, and somewhere around 50% of the people who donate are business people who buy. It's a really good place to have your listing.
Okay. I was only looking for the SEO.
And sorry, I'm on the board, so I had to say something.
Internet Summit, I got a link there last year. What about Meetup? Hey, Frank, I'm speaking here, so I got a link, right? Because I would walk off if I didn't get a link.
Patrick built your page.
TheeDesign up there, there's fun.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, I got my link.
It has to be good to get a citation.
Okay, so again, I started a list, but basically I want to build a better list. So at some point I'll shoot that over to you if you want to go ahead and make it public somewhere on the website or shoot it out as a tweet or something like that. But there's just huge opportunities in the local area alone. No, they don't have high domain authority, but that's okay because they're local. Besides that, I never looked at like more simple. Anybody else got any questions?
Hold up for the questions real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I've got to kind of move us along quickly.
Oh,
So, we do have one other speaker. We just don't have that other speaker.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought I was rambling. I was trying to help.
So we have Joy on cue that's going to come in via the internet. Rob is going to be here for a few minutes, so you can grab him while we're getting pizza to ask your question. For those that are standing, there are chairs down there. You're welcome to grab a chair and add to the sides. For everybody, hop up, grab some pizza. And I am going to take care of the technical matters of getting our video speaker in here in just a moment. And you got like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Need me for anything here? Grab a chairs.
Grab chairs, help with pizza, coordinate for bathrooms. I'm going to focus on tech. Once we've got her online, Patrick, once we've got her online, you're going to do the intro. Okay. Hey, Joy, I think you can hear me.
I think I can.
And I can hear you. Awesome. So let me get you up on the screen.
Okay.
I'm gonna go get chairs.
Right. Well, let's see. I think got it plugged in. Oh.
I know enough to stop.
You guys go where the bathrooms are at?
All the way down, go right to the kitchen.
All right, Joy, I'm thinking that you can't hear me. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you a little bit.
Yes. Did you say something? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Frank. Want to say hello, Darren? Yes, you want to say how you doing? You all right?
Well, going crazy trying to get this figured out because the audio is not working with me right now.
Is that Hangouts or?
Yeah, it's supposed to be. Joy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Say that you can?
I can hear you.
I know it sounds ridiculous with Hangouts. 1 minute you hang up and start again, it seems to work. Sometimes you can't beat the hanging up and dialing in again. But oh wow, okay.
Can you still hear me?
I'll leave you guys to stress.
I think this microphone is the only one that you can hear me on. Is that the computer mic or that computer mic? If you can hear me. Joy, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. We've got
You sound like really far in the distance.
it seems like the mic built into the
The conference website.
Like I can barely hear you over all the rest of the background noise.
Okay. More plates?
Yeah.
In my office, I save all the leftovers from previous meetings on top of the filing cabinet.
It's just from link from the homepage of the Raleigh meetup.
On our conference page on Raleigh.
Okay.
I also sent the link out in the email.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
All right, Joy, can you say something again? Testing your speaker on this end.
Very loud in there.
All right, I think that we got the speaker turned up loud enough on this end.
So should I try sharing my screen and making sure that works? Okay.
If you share your screen, it should take up the display in front of you here.
Okay, let's try that. Let me just make sure all my tabs are closed. Hold on.
Now that I got
Yeah.
apparently I'm amazing.
I'm those famous today. So what's going on with this? You just can't get over it?
I don't know why it's not working. It was working the whole time, but for some reason when I switch things around, it stopped. And I don't want to fight with it right now.
So is my screen sharing working?
Yes. Yes. Awesome. So we're going to hold questions until the end because we're going to have to repeat questions since I have this mic fail. And
The joy of live events. Sorry, Joy.
What?
We're having great fun with a live event. The microphones, the fancy ones.
What is this like a? Is this
So I'll round everybody up in just a couple minutes.
I'm gonna try. Sorry, I walked right.
I'm not selling that one.
Oh, it's just this one. No, this is this one. I'll show you the exact.
We tested it all before and everything was fine. It's when I switched to cabling and something stopped working and I want to start over.
And troubleshoot later.
Give it a name.
Hey, Joy?
Yep.
Can you see my screen? I was gonna give you a tour around.
I actually can't see anything while I'm sharing because I only have one screen up here on my laptop. So like, if I'm sharing, the Hangout is not there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Patrick's gonna give you a quick cell phone there while everybody's got
Yeah, next month you know.
We got 55 or 60 or so people. Got pretty good turnout today.
Your screen is hurting my head.
What was that?
Oh, I said your screen's making me dizzy. Whoa.
I would crank up the bass if you can.
All right, you want to go down, people? Yeah, go ahead and call it like that. All right, I'm testing something on the speaker. That's one thing.
I don't know things like
Oh, yeah. Oh, all right. We're working on bringing everybody back from having pizza. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. We're working on bringing everybody back from having pizza.
Okay. I'm jealous. I want some pizza.
Still playing with the mic? You got that working?
Yeah, we got this mic working. I think it was because of all the background noise. I have to get this close for it to work. But once everybody's quiet, I think it'll pick up the whole room.
I can hear you perfectly now, whatever you did.
Right next to it. Can you hear me?
Yes, you do sound very far away.
I'll walk around
It doesn't reach very far. It's only, I gotta get it longer.
Yeah. Okay.
Are y'all ready for round two? Hopefully everyone's getting their pizza, drinks. Everyone find the restroom. If not, it's all the way down. Hang a right. It's right near the kitchen. All right. So one thing Frank didn't announce, we do have a discount for the conference. It is SEO Meetup. It's $50 off for the early bird tickets, and they are limited.
It's
with
$50 off.
RaleighSEOconference.com.
It's $50 off on any ticket.
$50 on any ticket.
Yeah, but the early bird are limited.
Okay. Okay.
So
I
if
got
you
that
want the
wrong.
best bang for the buck, get the early bird and the discount.
These are Frank's notes. He shared them with me.
Sorry.
So I'm really happy to announce Joy Hawkins is joining us. She is. There's so many things on this list. Did anyone see the email? She is amazing. Google My Business Forum top contributor, Local Search Forum top contributor, Local University Forum moderator. She's a contributor to the Moz Local Search Ranking Factors Survey. She's the owner of Sterling Sky out of Canada, and is the author to the Expert's Guide to Local SEO, which is an advanced training manual. And I'm really looking forward to this one, Joy. Let's kick it off.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. Oh, I'm able to hear myself doing. Is there a way to turn that off? Oh, there you go. All right, perfect. So I'm going to screen share here. So hopefully you guys can see my presentation. If you can't, just let me know. 1 second. All right, perfect. So I'm really big on efficiency. So the topic I'm going to be basically talking about is how to be more efficient with what you spend time working on when it comes to local SEO, and what you can stop wasting time on that doesn't really do anything or doesn't help. So I'm trying to cover some things that we get a lot in the industry that are common myths, and hopefully some of these resonate with things you guys have experienced. So I'm just going to kind of go through them because I know I've got about 20 minutes, and I think there's like 10 or so different tips on here. So tip 1 would have to do with suite numbers and city names. So often you'll hear in the local SEO industry that if those of you that are familiar with the term NAP, stands for NAP, or sorry, name, address, phone number, which is, you know, essentially your kind of unit for your business, and having a unique name, address, and phone number is usually important to rank well. But people kind of take this too far, and they think, you know, okay, so if I'm a plumber and I've got another plumber in my building, you know, having a unique suite number will somehow help me not get filtered or help Google see that I'm a unique business. And basically through the last, I guess, 12 years that I've been working in this industry, I've never seen a case where a suite number has done anything to impact the search results, but it's definitely more true now than it used to be. For those of you that aren't familiar with Possum, it was a local algorithm update that came out in 2016 that made it so that Google would filter out businesses that were close together. So this was really problematic for attorneys, for example. A lot of attorneys are, you know, in large high-rise buildings. They share sometimes even suites, and so a lot of them got filtered because they were right next door to another attorney that does the exact same thing. So along with this algorithm update came the misconception that if you have a unique suite number, somehow that's going to help you not get filtered. So that's definitely not true. Also, you know, having more local visibility is also not impacted whatsoever by your suite number. Another thing that people kind of obsess about is what city to put in there. So this is an example of a town where I grew up. There's like a bunch of different ways to phrase it. The actual town name is Georgina, but there is a part of Georgina called Sutton, and then there is the postal code and the post office called it Sutton West. So depending on what you go by, you could either have Georgina, Sutton West, or Sutton. And you'll see when you do a search for, you know, plumber in Sutton, Ontario, it doesn't matter what specific city name the person is using. Google ranks them all kind of side by side there. So what you put in for your city name doesn't actually really matter either, because Google will match your location based on where they see that your PIN is. and Street View as it shows up on your listing. So this is another thing that I tell people, don't worry or stress over. Go with whatever Google suggests, but it's not going to like have a major impact on your ranking whether or not you pick one name or the other. The main thing to get right is the zip code, and also make sure that your PIN is correct. So talking about the PIN, I don't know if you guys remember when Google My Business used to be called Google Places back in the good old days. But back with Google Places, I thought it was actually really appropriate that Google used the PIN as the logo because it is literally all about where your PIN is. So whether or not you get filtered or whether or not, Google understands where you're located, it all has to do with where your PIN is. So just kind of keep that in mind. Make sure that Google has you plotted correctly and you're not, in the middle of the street or somewhere that is not actually where your business is located. Tip number 2 is when it comes to tracking local SEO, this is where I feel like a lot of agencies specifically get it wrong. So let's say, for example, I am a plumber in Raleigh and I want to know how I'm ranking. So a lot of people just go to their search ranking tracker and they would type in, plumber Raleigh, and then for the location, they would just put in Raleigh, North Carolina. So that is definitely not what you want to do. Here's an example using Houston. So when I search from Houston as the city, I get the results on the left. And when I search from a specific zip code in Houston, I get the results on the right. And you'll see, obviously, they don't match whatsoever. This is because when you search from a city, essentially what Google does is they plop the person's location in the middle of the city. So the very, very middle of Houston in this case, which is not at all where this user would be located when they're searching if they're close by. They would be searching and Google would say, okay, they're in this zip code, and they're going to show them businesses closer to that zip code. There was actually a fantastic article written about this recently by Juris Digital. It's Casey Mraz's company. And they wrote a blog article recently where they actually looked at, I think in Houston, something like 83 different law firms. And they basically looked up every single zip code and every single way that the search results came up in the Houston area, and found that, like, depending on what zip code they searched from, there was a combination of like 80 small different firms that appeared. So it's really important to make sure that you're tracking from the zip code your business is in. Otherwise, you're not going to get an accurate picture of what a person near you is going to see, because the person's location is actually more important half the time than what they actually type in. They could type in Houston, but if they're, in a certain part of Houston, Google's going to show them those results, which makes sense because most people don't want to travel, 30 minutes across a big city to get to a business. Tip number 3 is to stop ignoring new Google My Business categories. So this is kind of hard for a business owner or even an agency because there are currently just under 4,000 different Google My Business categories. There's a lot of them out there. Google doesn't have a list kind of published anywhere. But as part of the training manual that I write, I actually keep track of these and I check regularly for updates. So when I was looking at, like, in between the month of July and I think November, December, there was 20 new categories that were added. And also choosing the right Google My Business categories is one of the top ranking factors according to Moz's local search ranking factors study. So it is really important. I see this all the time where businesses want to rank for one thing, and then the category that they've picked is actually going to get them ranked for something else. So it's really important to make sure you look to see what categories your competitors are using, and who's using what category based on the keyword you type in. And also keep in mind, whatever you choose for your primary category, this carries the most weight. So pick it wisely. Don't be super generic if you want to rank for something specific. Again, looking at attorneys, if you're a criminal attorney, you would not want to put attorney as your main category. You would want to put criminal attorney as your main category, if that's the main thing that you do. Here's just an example of one example I've noticed with categories. There was a case actually in Canada on the forum that I was helping out with, and there's actually 2 different categories in Google My Business for chartered accountant. They look exactly the same, except for one is a capital A and one is lowercase a. But on the back end, they actually are 2 totally different things. One means certified public accountant, and one means chartered accountant, which have different definitions. So which one you choose actually makes a difference on where you rank, which is kind of crazy. This is like sometimes the level of detail that I've seen go into categories. And again, it's just really important to look at what competitors are using and make sure you're kind of using the same thing. Tip number 4 has to do with homepage. This is actually something that I'm going to be going into more detail on in my local U presentation that I'm doing in Austin next month. But we found some really cool success stories based on this tactic. So I'll kind of explain this. If you're a business that has a ton of locations, this may not apply, but most businesses, I'm assuming, that you guys work with, have a limited number of locations, maybe 1, 2, or 3. And normally for these cases, using the homepage in the website field of Google My Business is best for ranking. So, when you go into Google My Business and you can click or put in there what specific URL you want the person to go to when they click, generally you would want to use your homepage. And I say that generally because that's not always the case. So what we did or found was we had a client that was an attorney, and we noticed that he wasn't really ranking well for drug injury attorney for his city, something that, his specific types of cases that he does. And when we were kind of looking in there, we noticed in Google My Business, we were linking to his homepage, and he actually had one of his inner pages ranking organically. He was like the first one organically, but he was nowhere in the 3-pack. This was very irritating because, when you think you're ranking high organically, you should rank in the 3-pack ideally. The problem was that the page that we were linking to, the homepage, had no reference to drug injury anywhere on it. It didn't mention drugs, didn't mention medicine, it didn't mention anything related to drugs. It talked about personal injury and all kinds of other stuff, but nothing drug related. So when I was looking through the competitors that ranked in the 3-pack, I noticed a lot of their content did include words to do with drugs, specifically on their homepage. So I really didn't expect this to work whatsoever, but all I did was make a very slight modification to his homepage, and I added the word drug injury in there on one of his descriptions, like one of his paragraphs, and this is what happened. So literally he was nowhere in the local results. And this tracker, just so you know, it's using Bright Local, and it's specifically tracking the local results, Google Maps. And this is what happened. He went from nowhere to basically being 3rd or 4th. And then we, tweaked it and modified, and it went up a little bit more. But that was kind of a light bulb moment for me, and something that I think a lot of people don't realize is that the page that you're linking to in Google My Business has to actually contain the words that you want to rank for. It's not specifically the entire domain that Google looks at. They're not saying oh, this website has all this content on all these pages. They really just look at the one page that you're linking to. Might be a flaw. I'm sure it'll eventually evolve, but that's currently how it works. Tip number 5. So when it comes to tracking local SEO, this is, again, I think a missed opportunity that a lot of people don't realize. They think, oh, Google My Business Insights are awesome. I go in there and I can see how many people searched, and I can see how many people clicked, and I can see how many people called. And unfortunately, the number of calls inside Google My Business is highly inaccurate, and I'll kind of explain what I'm talking about here. So to test this out, in case you're wondering how on earth I even got these numbers, we went in for a few clients and we changed the main phone number that we were using on Google My Business from their main phone number to a tracking phone number. And this way we could literally track every call that came from Google My Business and know that it came from that, because that phone number was not listed anywhere on their website or anywhere else online. So in this case, and sorry, there's a typo on this slide. The left is supposed to say, this is the calls according to Google My Business Insights. So on the left, where it says 7 for home security, Google My Business Insights basically told us they had 7 calls. In reality, they had 16 calls, according to the call tracking number, which recorded every call as well. Google My Business Insights for the auto repair business that we tried this on said that they had 12 calls. In reality, they had 35. Quite the difference. And there's a few reasons for this. First of all, Google My Business doesn't actually track unique callers. So in this case, actually the numbers for Google My Business could be higher than they would be in reality. So for example, out of those 35 calls that the auto repair client got, there were only actually 24 different callers. Some callers called back, more than once. And I think having the number of unique calls is another reason why you want to use call tracking, because it's just a more valuable number. Instead of saying oh, you got 35 calls, you can say you have 24 different leads or different customers that were calling you. They also track calls from AdWords. This is a big problem. They don't segment these out, and they don't say which calls were from AdWords and which ones were from organic. But essentially, if you're using AdWords and you're using location extensions, any calls that you get from your location extensions are showing up in Google My Business Insights. again, this is not something that Google like puts in their help center or really publicizes. But for example, one of the personal injury attorneys that I work with had 13 calls in 1 month from his 3-pack ads or from his location extensions. And those 13 calls would have showed up in Google My Business Insights and, you know, would have maybe even count them twice technically if I wasn't tracking them properly. So that's another reason why it is a good idea to use a call tracking number. There is actually a way to segment, I didn't get into that in this presentation, but there is a way to track the calls from AdWords specifically. There's a field for it. So if anyone needs to know how that works, follow up with me after. But essentially, you don't want AdWords calls showing up in the Google My Business Insights, which is why it's good to use call tracking number. Also, Google My Business Insights actually doesn't track calls at all. Google doesn't have the ability to track phone calls on your phone. Like, they have no right to do that. All they can do is track clicks to call. So if someone taps that call button on their phone, that doesn't necessarily mean they called you. It means they clicked on your call button. Also, it doesn't, you know, filter out invalid ones that where people didn't actually complete the call. And it's only tracking mobile. So think of all those people that pulled up your listing on a computer and dialed your number. None of those people are being counted, which is crazy because there's a lot of those. That's probably, in my opinion, the main reason why those two numbers are so different, because Google My Business Insights tracking, you know, about a third, maybe half, depending on the industry, of the actual calls that you get. So in case you're wondering, you're like, okay, wait, I've heard my entire life that tracking numbers are bad for local SEO. You don't want to use a tracking number because it's going to cause your ranking to like completely plummet. So there is a trick to doing this to make sure that doesn't happen. So what you want to do is in Google My Business, you put the tracking number in there, you put it in the primary phone slot, but you want to move the real for the business to additional phone slot. That won't make, that will, that Google does screw up your consistency and then connect the dots to see what the real phone number, you know it's the same business. The additional phone number, I don't even know what the field is for, to be quite honest, because it doesn't show up anywhere publicly. So it's only Google that can actually see your real number on the back end, but a user searching Google or using Google Maps will not see the additional phone field. They will only see the primary phone field. And this is in case you're wondering, on like one of the clients we switched it on, there was no ranking drop when we switched it. So this is just the ranking tracker, and you can see like no bad changes. Actually, they went up a few positions due to other things. So tip number 6 is stop ignoring how things look on mobile. So this is a habit that we get into as marketers. You know, I'm on my computer all day long and looking at how things look on my computer, but we often forget that users using Google Maps and Chrome on their phones are going to get, or Safari, depending on what kind of user you are, they're going to get a totally different looking set of results. So here's an example, you know, for restaurants. There are things called attributes, which actually exist on lots of different business types. There's just way more of them for restaurants than most industries. But attributes are things that show up only on mobile. You don't see these on computers, but there's things that actually describe the business. And, you know, you can see here for this restaurant, they list all you can eat, quiet, cozy, etc. Attributes are kind of a neat feature. Here's another way that attributes are shown on mobile, again, only on mobile. The highlight section, these little icons, there's these. There's one that says woman-led. There's one that says, I think it's here, like open to LGBTQ stuff. It's like a little icon on there. There's different attributes depending on the different types of business. They only show up on mobile. Not looking at mobile, you might not even see how they look. Then also there is Q&A, which questions and answers are like a niche feature came out. And so this is an example. I have to probably background story here. You that aren't here with who Walter Palmer is, this is the dentist that was responsible for killing Cecil Llewellyn a few years ago. So it was all over the media and news, and basically he gets a lot of bad reviews on Google from people that are, you know, animal activists and things like that. And one of the things I know first, he's getting awful, really inappropriate.
Hey, Joy.
Yep.
I got to pause you for just a moment. We're having some major bandwidth lag on this end.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Give me just a moment. I don't know if everybody heard me. If anybody's using the local Wi-Fi, please hop off of it. Let's see if we can use all the bandwidth for the video call. I was trying to use less so that way it would fit, less bandwidth through the pipe.
I don't know what that means, but feeling more bandwidth.
It would give you a higher quality video, an HD video instead of a lower quality video. I'm trying to prioritize audio. All right, everybody set? Joy, we got sharing the screen from Infinity.
It was kind of creepy. So I was trying to see if I could get these notifications from stopping popping up, but.
All right.
Let me know when you want me to continue.
I think we might be ready to give it another shot.
All right. Okay, so with Q&A, this was the example of one of the questions. I'm not going to read this because it's super inappropriate, but Walter Palmer got this question posted on his listing. And why this is connected to mobile is currently, and this is going to be changing soon, but currently the only way that you can get notified from Google about a new question that is posted on your listing is through the Google Maps app. So basically business owners have to have the Google Maps app on their phone. They have to be logged in under the account that they use to manage their listing, and then they'll get a push notification when a new question gets posted. If you don't have all those things set up, then unfortunately you won't know when stuff like this, hopefully, not for any business you work with, but some related questions, anything that is posted by a user on your listing, you won't get the notification if you're not set up on mobile. So that's maybe keep in mind. Google tends to roll out some features to mobile that do not exist on computers. Regarding Q&A, just kind of a tip here. A lot of people don't realize that you can actually cause a question to show up in your knowledge panel. So when someone searches your brand name, there's only the opportunity for one question to show up in your knowledge panel, but it's controlled by the likes, which is funny. Basically, you just have to have someone go and like the question, and it'll instantly show up in your knowledge panel. So you can see on the left, nothing there. It just says, see questions 2. And then on the right, after we liked the question and literally just liked it once, it now showed up in the knowledge panel. So you can control this, make sure it's a question you want showing for your brand. And then same thing with the answer. If you like the answer, then that answer will show up. And if you have multiple likes, it kind of defaults to the one that has the most. So, down the line, as this feature becomes more popular, this might be something that's harder to control, but as of right now, it's literally just one. So in regards to spam, so I don't know if any of you have ever interacted with me on Twitter. I'd like to tweet about spam a lot. But one of the things I've noticed over the years is that a lot of people expect that Google should be able to solve this spam problem themselves and to be able to figure out what's real listing, what's fake listing, and what's spam and what's not. They're really bad at it when it comes to local. So first thing you should do is just stop expecting them to know how to detect it automatically, because they just don't. I follow spam trends a lot, deal with it a ton on the My Business forum and also with clients. But basically, the newest trends we've been seeing. So locksmiths have gone from, set listings at UPS stores to get listed in multiple towns to creating pop-up locations. So essentially what they do is they rent an office for a month. They go and they set the listing, they take a bunch of pictures with signs on their walls that are like posters they stick up, making it look like they have an office there. Then they have the lease expire. They're no longer there a few months later, but now they've got the listing on Google Maps. So that's all they really. Those are obviously a lot of tax than the UPS store, where Google can just say, oh, like this address is the UPS store, let's remove it. So people are getting smarter. When I say people, I mean people that are Google's, guidelines on the way, the system. Another thing we notice a lot with attorneys. So, I'll have a criminal personal injury attorney, and they'll say, hey, your office and my office, and that way we can get 2 listings on Google, and I'm in that city, and let's just both be listed in most cities, and win-win for both people. Again, it's way harder to show, because believe it or not, people actually show up now and videotape and do all kinds of crazy things to prove this is actually at a location when they're saying that they are, because this is the type of trend we're noticing. The other thing is non-staffed offices. So I noticed this actually in the insurance vertical, but it's been on a lot of other ones as well, where basically people will go and they'll get an office, they'll rent an office, just so that they can get a listing on Google. So it's, in one case, it was literally like almost like a storage room that they rented just to get an office so that they get listed on Google Maps in that city. They were never there, obviously. It was one back room. They don't actually have clients show up there. And because they're not actually there and they're not actually staffing the office, Google removed it. But again, in order to prove it was fake, someone actually had to show up, take a video, and submit it through the forum. And it's kind of nuts, but this is, again, the lengths that people are kind of going to these days to get listed. So when you are reporting spam, if you're reporting it on the forum or you're reporting it directly to Google My Business on Twitter, their handle is @Google My Biz, B-I-Z. Make sure you're using clear photos when you're talking to them or the volunteers in the forum. You need to show no business here and this is not a real listing. That's one of the biggest ways that you can have success with reporting spam. So here's one of my favorite examples. This is an attorney that was in New York and wanted to show up in Brooklyn and Manhattan and every well-populated area, but he really only had one office, I believe. So set up all these different listings, and his Google Business page, he actually posted a picture of his sign that was at the front of the building. And you'll see here, on the left, it shows he's got a sign on the wall. However, if you look at Street View, he doesn't have that sign on, obviously not there, it's photoshopped. And what's actually there is a virtual office service or a mailing service, and you can see that at the bottom. So using Street View, I'll be able to show this to Google, but it's just kind of funny the lengths that people go to try and say that they're at a location when they're not. And I go on and on about that, but I won't. So the other thing to keep in mind is in regards to negative reviews. This is a kind of sensitive topic that people get very heated about, and actually I did an article about negative reviews on Moz a couple months ago, and it was probably the most heated comments I've ever got. People were just really annoyed, pissed off at Google, and I feel like sometimes they were even pissed off at me for writing it. This is a very sensitive topic, so just keep that in mind. What I would strongly suggest, if you've ever gone down this road, what is a waste of time is trying to fight a negative review by saying, we don't have a customer by that name. I get this so frequent on the forum. It's the number one thing I hear is, this is a fake review. I don't have a customer named Susan, and she left this review, and it's obviously a competitor. Unfortunately, Google won't act on those because there is absolutely no way for them to prove that. They're not going to look through your customer base, even if you try to provide it to them. They won't. So if you're thinking
Joy,
that...
we're back to the lag.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah. We're going to try maybe switching to a different wireless network here. If you have any background apps that you're able to close, or within Hangouts, you can change the quality, maybe take it down one level from HD.
Okay.
It'll prioritize audio over video.
Whoa.
Sorry, guys.
So where do I change the settings on the audio?
If you move your mouse over the video, you'll see at the top there's a little 4 bars like you see on your cell phone.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
With usage.
So it's currently at the highest bar. What should I move it to?
Try taking it down just one notch.
Okay. Medium?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I did that. And I finally was able to kill Slack. So sorry, that should probably stop those notifications.
And I'm going to switch to a different wireless network as well. I'll probably be right back on the call. All right, I think I'm reconnected already.
All right, perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So let's give that a shot, and we'll see how we're doing there.
Okay, so regarding the negative review stuff, one of the other things that people often will say is that they go and they flag review and they feel like it's just this giant black hole because nothing happens. They don't know if anyone even looked at their case and what's not. So I'm kind of in this boat. I think flagging a review often is a black hole. However, Google claims that if you flag a review, they will actually have a human being review it within 3 days. So keep that in mind. This is actually the process if you have a review that you do think violates Google's guidelines. So first you have to make sure they actually violate one of the guidelines. So you have to, it cannot be just your word. You can't just say this guy never came here or I never spoke to him, because they will not get involved in a he said, she said argument. But once you've got your proof or whatever, you flag the review inside the Google My Business dashboard, but you have to wait 3 days. Don't bother contacting Google My Business until 3 days is up, because that's the process that they have, and they'll basically just tell you to go flag it and call them back in 3 days. So definitely make sure you wait 3 days. And if it doesn't go away and it's still there 3 days later, at that point you can contact Google My Business support with your evidence and say this is why it should be removed. But keep in mind you have to actually have that evidence. So tip number 9, verification issues are something that also come up a lot with business owners trying to get access to their listing. So one of the big things that we actually don't hear as much anymore, I think, but we used to hear a lot, is like, my SEO company is holding my listed hostage, and they are claiming that they're not going to give me access. Google actually redid their entire verification process last year to try and keep this from being possible. So there is a process now that is completely automated, but it does take 7 days. So if you're trying to get access to a listing and you're like, oh, I'm going to call Google or I'm going to contact Google, don't bother until the 7 days are up. It's a complete waste of time. So I'll explain how the process works. So first thing that you have to do is you have to try and verify the listing. So it's claimed listing. You don't know who owns it. You're not sure where it is or what login to use. But you go ahead and try and claim it. It's going to bring you to this page. It's going to say somebody already owns this listing, and you can request to get ownership. So you'll get this email, and it'll say, thank you for requesting ownership. And, if you don't receive a response in 7 days, you request and continue. So if that 7-day period, happens, and the other owner, gets that email, they'll get a notification from Google, and they'll say, oh, we'll be glad to give you access. That's awesome. Then all of a sudden, when they give you access, you become the primary owner on the listing, and that person that gave you access is automatically going to get demoted to a manager, which means you can remove them if you want. If it's like an old SEO company that you don't want them on there anymore, you can actually remove them once they have granted you access. So that's super. If they ignore you or deny your request, after 7 days, you can claim the listing by verifying it by postcard. So essentially, that email that you got initially, click the listing to view, the status. It'll send you this page that will have an appeal button on it. It'll say, the person who you requested ownership from has denied your request. Would you like to appeal? And it'll say appeal. When you click that, it essentially sends a postcard out to the business. So this is Google saying, okay, you're saying they're not the real owner. You've got to now prove you are the real owner. So they send the postcard. Once you get the postcard and you enter the PIN, they are immediately booted off, because Google realizes obviously that you are the true owner and they're not, and they will no longer have access to the listing whatsoever, and you'll now be the primary owner. So either way, whether they give you access or they don't give you access, you can still get access to the listing by verifying it. So it's really not what it used to be a year ago, before they had this process where people were locking people out, and it was this giant mess. Last tip, this I can do the last one on here, is in regards to Google Posts. I have to give a shout out here to Steady Demand. Those of you that don't know them, it's run by Ben Fisher. He's another one of the Google My Business contributors, and they specialize in Google Posts and Google Plus posting. So social media is their thing. And I did a test with them last fall to basically find out if posting using Google Posts impacted ranking at all. So what I had them do, or what they did for my clients, is basically they went in and they did 2 posts every, I think it was 2 posts every 7 days. And basically they would post things that were relevant to the business. They have like the whole system that they use to try and figure out like what types of content to post. But and one of the keywords that we were tracking, we noticed within about a week, or just under a week, there was a 1 position increase. And we weren't doing anything else for this business. I particularly picked one that was not really doing a whole lot with SEO, and wasn't going to have other things that they were doing kind of impact the results. For another business that, again, wasn't really doing any SEO-wise, wasn't getting new reviews or anything like that, they actually had a 5-position increase for the keyword garage floor about 4 days after. So it was about the same time frame we started posting. The interesting thing is that the increase that we saw were pretty much like within a week from when we started, and they didn't die after the posting stopped, which I thought was kind of interesting. Basically, the posting that we were doing was, you know, semi-frequent, like it was a couple times a month, but I figured, you know, maybe once it actually stops the test after a couple months, that, you know, the rank increase we saw would die off, and it didn't. That being said, over time it might, but we did conclude that basically posting on Google has a moderate impact on ranking, and it's moderate because we purposely tracked it on businesses that are really non-competitive industries. So like this garage flooring business, for example, they don't even have, garage flooring, they don't have a lot of competitors. So it wasn't one of those cases where you've got like 30 or 40 businesses that you're competing against. They really only had like 3 or 4 or 5 in the given area that we were in. So this is not going to be something where if you start doing it for, you know, an attorney or an insurance agent or a dentist, you're probably not going to see like a crazy impact, but you may see like a lift in, you know, 1 or 2 keywords that might be like a few positions. So it's one of those like low impact types of strategies, but I do suggest doing it. We've seen lots of success from Google posts, and if you're not really sure what to post about, Steady Man did a really great job of coming up with content, so you can reach out to them. And that was the end of the presentation there, but on my slide here, I do have a promo code that if you guys want to use for my training. So I do have a training guide that I spend a few hours every month updating, about 230 pages long currently. It's all about local SEO. So it's for people that you know, have the general idea of SEO, but want to know more about like Google My Business and how things work as it pertains to local SEO. That's the promo code on there. But yeah, I don't know if you want to open up for Q&A now.
Thank you very much, Joy.
Yeah, no problem.
And I think that this mic is hot enough in this room that anybody can ask a question.
With regards to mobile businesses, how do you recommend doing like your business location? Because you know, if you have they have an office, but they provide mobile services, do you have any theory on whether it's better to put an address in your business listing or not? So you'll show up all over you know, a town or city.
So for service area businesses, basically whatever address you use is where you're going to rank. So if your home address is in a specific city, that's where you're going to rank. What you put as your service area has nothing to do with your ranking. It's all based on your actual address. So one thing to keep in mind is if you've got a business that maybe has like 3 or 4 owners, I would use the business address that, you know, corresponds with the city that you're going to get the most business from to use for that, to represent that business online.
So my client has seen competitors that just put our city as their location, whereas he puts his actual, you know, a physical address in there, a street address. And he's finding that the competitors ranking because they very generically have the city as their location, where, you know, he's having to, Google is, you know, locating searches to his address that he put in. Does that make sense? Like, is it better to just put a physical address and just say, I'm in this city?
So the people that are doing that you're only seeing the city, they do have a full address. You can't have a listing without an address. What they're doing is they're selecting the box inside the Google My Business dashboard that tells Google you want to hide your address. And in those cases, Google sees the address and they rank you according to that address. But the regular users don't see the full address. They only see the city name.
Okay.
It still works the same way though. They're only going to rank based on where the actual address is. It's hidden essentially.
Thank you.
So, how to link the Facebook reviews or Yelp reviews to the Google My Business page?
You mean like getting them to show up in your knowledge panel?
Uh-huh.
So in order to show up in the knowledge panel, it has to pull up organically. for example, if you do a search for like McDonald's Raleigh and have like McDonald's location, if there were links to like Facebook and Yelp and I don't know, Yellow Pages, for example, on the left-hand side, like that showed up organically, Google will automatically pull them into the reviews around the web section. The exception to this would be Yelp. You will never see Yelp show up in the knowledge panels because Google blocks them due to them actually complaining about it. So the ones that we most commonly see are Facebook and like Foursquare and Yellow Pages. Industries have ones that show up in there as well. It's basically sites that are using review schema. So if the directory is using review schema and you've got gold stars organically for your listing, then it's eligible to show up in your knowledge panel.
Anything to force? I mean, can we give the links to Google saying that this is the page you need to track, or something to?
No, you can tell them. They basically have to. They do it algorithmically, and it's based on what's typed in. So, like, if you have one name for your business, for example, or like one way of phrasing, you might actually find for different searches, different links are pulling in, but it's based on like who shows up organically. Let me see if I can find you an example. Maybe a sec here.
This is why the name, address, phone number being the same is so important, right?
For sure. So, right, let me see. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen here. Okay, so like in this example here, you'll see reviews around the web for this business shows U.S. insurance agents, this website. So when you scroll down the left here, it's because basically out of the sites that show up, like Yelp doesn't qualify. They've got review schema here. But then if I scroll down, this is actually the site that it's pulling from. They've got review schema. Not 100% sure why MapQuest isn't pulling in there. Usually you'll see MapQuest as well. But they look for ones where it's the business showing up on the organic side, and then the site has to be using review schema. So you're looking for like these gold star ratings.
You had a question?
There we go. This one has more. So like Facebook, ShareCritic, Foursquare, which there's Facebook, there's ShareCritic, and there's Foursquare. So that's like another example.
So how much impact does the actual physical address have on the SEO? So for instance, say you're just within the limits of Raleigh versus being directly downtown in the center of Raleigh, how much does that have an impact on SEO?
So you're going to basically find that like your ranking will change drastically based on the searcher's location, not your location, but like where the person is when they're typing in something into Google. So if you're on one side of Raleigh, you're not going to show up to users that are on the other side when they're typing in stuff into Google. So it's really based on the searcher's location, not the heart of Raleigh or the centroid or anything like that. If the person's in the middle of Raleigh when they're searching, then businesses near the middle of Raleigh will show up higher. But if the person's near you, then you'll show up higher. That's why it's so important to track from a specific zip code so that you can kind of see what users are seeing in your area. And then if you change the zip code, you'll see the further you get away from your location, the lower your ranking will be. Like it'll drop until you're not anymore. So the algorithm no longer favors people that are close to the center of the city because they're literally changing the results based on the user's location.
So as a follow-up question to that, so Google's using just the search with actual location rather than like browser history or search history or IP address or any other factor?
They definitely use search history. Like I see all the time businesses that I visited, rank higher, and then if I search in incognito, they're not there. So definitely they use search history. And IP address, I think, also comes into play. But the one thing that does impact it still is if you don't have a location within the city that the person is actually searching. So let's say, for example, the person types in tree service Raleigh, and you service Raleigh, but technically you're like right outside of Raleigh. You're probably not going to rank at all for tree service Raleigh because the word Raleigh was typed in, but you would still rank for just like tree service.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Joy. Thank you very much for joining us.